All right, we are now live. Welcome to the show, everyone. The United States government has shut down once again as Democrats demand the reversal of major spending cuts. But Republicans and President Trump refuse to back down, so far anyway. In fact, this might very well backfire spectacularly on Schumer. At the same time, the ADL is facing growing backlash after its Glossary of Hate targeted groups like TPUSA, prompting even the FBI to distance itself. Meanwhile, Chicago schools continue to struggle with failing literacy rates, yet the teachers' union chose to highlight and celebrate a convicted terrorist. And while the Wall Street Journal claims that the U.S. is losing the race to China on green tech, I have to ask, who cares? Anyway, we are going to talk about all of this and more in episode 513 of the In the Tank podcast.
Going to see it. They'll see it in other ways. It's easy to find, but it is absolutely disgusting in every way. It is a lie. It's the man you met with has now lied about what you said after that meeting. Could you give us your reaction to that Trump posted video tonight?
It's a disgusting video, and we're going to continue to make clear bigotry will get you nowhere. We are fighting to protect the health care of the American people in the face of an unprecedented Republican assault.
Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lueken, your host, and we also have with us today Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute, Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute, and Chris Talgo, Editorial Director and Socialism Research Fellow. How are we all doing this week? That really cracked me up, Jim. I know you were the one who put that video in there.
Yeah, I like to try to find a nice fun stinger to put at the end of our little intro video there, and I couldn't resist that. That was really, really, I thought, great. I mean, you can't beat the master troller, and Donald Trump trolls better than anybody and his team to make that video. And then, if Hakeem Jeffries was smart, and he's not. If he was smart, he should have changed his profile pic, his avatar on X, to him wearing a sombrero and a mustache. Because then, if he leans into it, then the poking fun of him would stop. But he didn't do that. So it will. So the funny punishment will continue, and I'm glad to be able to be here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a tweet from our vice president this morning, but I think he posted it yesterday, where he said, if Representative Jeffries helps us open up the government right now, the sombrero memes will stop. This is my solemn promise. Vice President of the United States, everyone. It's pretty fantastic. Sam, how are you doing?
Doing fine, thanks, Linnea. It is great to see some good news arriving lately. It's been a while. Things have been kind of iffy, especially a couple of weeks back. And it's good to see that we're sort of moving along and taking things in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that we end up getting to kind of thank you, Andy. That's the tweet. We'll end up getting some major cuts through with this shutdown, so that'll be pretty great. Chris, how are you? You and Andy were talking sports before the opening of the show here.
Well, Linnea, I'll tell you at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock p.m. today, after the Cubs hopefully win and advance to the next round of the MLB playoffs. But I don't know. Yesterday was not great.
It's too bad. All right, everyone. So before we get started, as always, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like the video, and remember that sharing it helps to break through some of YouTube's suppression, which hopefully won't be a problem forever, but so far nothing has changed. But even just leaving us a comment helps us as well. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review. So everyone go click the little thumbs up button right now before you do anything else. I'll give you a second. All right, now we will get into it here. We're going to start us off with Unhinged today. Andy, if you have that. Amazing. All right, so on our first topic today is on Unhinged. The Anti-Defamation League has classified or had classified Turning Point USA as an extremist group, which is, of course, absurd and offensive. So what was their reasoning here? The ADL claimed that TPUSA had ties to a range of right-wing extremists and generated support from anti-Muslim bigots, I'm quoting from their site here, alt-light activists, and some corners of the white supremacist alt-right. Alt-right. I haven't heard that term since 2016. Man, that takes me back. Anyway, this isn't the only time the ADL has classified an innocuous or a normal conservative group as extremist, and they aren't anywhere near the only ones doing it. The Southern Poverty Law Center is arguably even worse, but the difference is that the ADL's materials were being used a lot by the FBI under James Comey, but the good news is that's now changing. So here, Fox News reports FBI Director Kash Patel is cutting ties with the Anti-Defamation League that the Bureau forged under its former boss, James Comey. James Comey disgraced the FBI by writing love letters to the ADL and embedding agents with an extreme group functioning like a terrorist organization and the disgraceful operation they ran spying on Americans. That was not law enforcement, it was activism dressed up as counterterrorism, and it put Americans in danger, Patel told Fox News Digital. That era is finished. This FBI formally rejects Comey's policies and any partnership with the ADL, he added. Jim, the ADL claims that their entries in their glossary of extremism, which now has gone, radio silent, they've taken it off of their website, at least for public viewing. They claim that their entries were being misrepresented, but it's pretty clear what they were doing here, right?
Well, it's very clear what they're doing here. And, the Anti-Defamation League, like so many once respected institutions and that were useful and honest, have over time been infiltrated and taken over by leftist activists. And then they hollow out a once respected institution, and then they wear it like a skin suit and pretend to still have the authority and even-handedness and respect that it once had, and they use it to relentlessly hammer their agenda. And in the case of the ADL, and also for the Southern Poverty Law Center, is to try to destroy any political opposition to the Democrats and or the regime. And in the case of the Biden presidency, it was the entire regime. It's, part of me is a little sad because there is a place for a legitimate anti-defamation league. There is a place for such organizations to keep tabs on actual extremism. But when it has been hollowed out and completely taken over by the left, and this is happening, you can almost every institution that's been around for more than maybe 30 years has had this happen to it. That leftists completely take it over and pervert what it's, and usually 100%, 180-degree turn for what it's supposed to do. And it does the opposite, yet while telling you and gaslighting you that it's actually doing the former. This is fantastic news. I think this is a resetting of the world. I see around us, I was talking with a friend about this the other day, that we've talked about it on this podcast, like things are kind of getting back to normal, that, the complete inversion of truth is starting to fall away, and people are be able to see what's really happening in the world, and our government is no longer going to be partnering with these institutions that were in a partnership with the Biden administration were used to attack conservatives and anybody perceived to be an enemy of the state. Kash Patel has ended that, hopefully. And it's important to remember we are still not finished with year one of the Trump presidency. And so a lot of these changes, policy changes that are being made, are going to be in place for another 3 years at least. And if a Republican is elected after Trump, they will remain in place for another 4 years. And the hope is that all of this crazy stuff, all of this abuse of power by the left, both in the private sector power and in the government, will be so far behind the rearview mirror that it really doesn't have a chance to come back again, that it could be a semi-permanent rejection and ending of these kinds of abuses of power and public trust. To call Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk, a hate group, these are the same organizations that helped justify the Biden administration putting just ordinary parents showing up at school board meetings on terror watch lists. We just kind of got used to that, right? I did. I guess we did. It was outrageous, and we would speak about it, but it just seemed like it would just never end because it seemed as if the left had a permanent hold on power, both private sector power and government power, but mostly when they're combined together. Happily, we're learning that is not the case, and for at least now, and hopefully for many years, that confluence of joint power will not come back.
Absolutely. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on this one. I knew Jim would want to. Sam, please do.
Thank you, Linnea. I wrote in my Life, Liberty, Property newsletter for the Heartland Institute last week, or really it came out this week, but I wrote in that what we need in order to shrink government is we need government action. This is a perfect example of that, where you have the federal government stopping some of the things that it itself was doing that were creating advantages for what is really a fraud. And so, but I think we need a little more action. One of the things that we have in place is that it's really, really difficult because it's very expensive to get a lawsuit successful against a company that or an organization or an individual that defames you. And that has several causes. One of which, of course, is the Sullivan decision by the Supreme Court, which said that it's not possible to libel anyone who's in the public, who's known to the public, which is an absurd and disgusting decision. The Supreme Court has got to overrule that sometime soon. However, on top of that, we have in all the states, they have their bar associations are regulated by the state government. Okay, fair, reasonable. But the bar associations then were taken over by the left. And they also include much shrinkage of how many lawyers you can have. They put limits on how many lawyers can be allowed to operate in a state. That raises the price of lawyers. So you see where I'm going with this, is that it's extremely expensive to sue somebody for defamation. Donald Trump could do it because he has the money to do it. And some others have been able to do it. But for years and years, organizations have been absolutely 100% defamed by places like the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center. They're committing fraud, and government should step in on the state level and on the federal level and stop that. But that's even so, we should have been able to have lawsuits against defamation and libel going on for decades here because it's been happening. And but the great expense of bringing these lawsuits has kept people from doing that. So there are many things that the government can do to shrink government. And this is one of them. The Trump administration has begun that process, but there's a long, long way to go.
I'll just close with this. Jim hit a lot of the big notes here. I would just say that the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center were begun with, great aims. And here we are all these years later. And guess what? They are the extremist groups. So it's just sad that that's what has happened.
Absolutely. Well, and things are, sometimes kind of, especially when you have groups like ADL targeting, or not targeting, but, labeling Turning Point as an extremist group, right when we were just having a whole conversation nationally. And I don't know how long it was on their list, but, a national conversation about how rhetoric can lead to, violence.
Yeah, but, Linnea,
like violent targeting.
And I would love to, I don't know, I know we don't want to keep talking about this topic because we got
No,
a lot of
please
other
do.
ones to talk about, but I would love to hear what you three think on this. So the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center, I'll kind of use those two as my examples here. I think when they were first founded all those years ago, they had a reason for being. They really had to fight, discrimination and some really bad stuff. And then when I think here we are in 2025, I'm not saying that there's zero racism, zero discrimination, but I feel like their scope has changed so much, and they're just trying to justify their existence to some degree.
Well, it's not just that. It's that, I think that it's what's been discussed with a lot of organizations, like Sam was just saying, what Jim was saying, is you can have this organization that was started with, a legitimate purpose, but if it gets captured by these leftist crazy people, they will and do weaponize it against their political enemies. And that's what's happened with the ADL and the SPLC. They look, and then you look at their lists, and you'll have something like the Ku Klux Klan, all 6 remaining members. They'll say this is an extremist group, and you're like, okay. And then you look down the line, and Turning Point USA is on there, or Moms for Liberty or something is on there. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd.
I agree with you. Can I just go real quick?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I agree with everything that you're saying. I just feel that they are trying their best to stay relevant, and they are obviously trying to, beat a dead horse and, just keep saying the same old thing about, racism and, blacks have inability to vote in the South. And we know that's just not true. So as a former teacher, I remember I saw a whole bunch of Southern Poverty Law Center posters in other teachers' classrooms, and it was just the same old stuff about how the Republican Party wants to deter minorities from voting, and it's just sad. It's just not true. It's not true at all.
Well, I guess, it's kind of like what Steve Malloy says about the EPA or something, right? Where, we've cleaned up the air, we've cleaned up the water, with the exception of, particular spills or something that happen, individual pollution events. But if the EPA were to acknowledge that, hey, we've done a really good job, we can actually kind of contract our reach at this point. They can't do that. They'll never do that unless they're forced to do that. And it's the same, I think, with organizations like the ADL and the SPLC. We don't have Jim Crow. That kind of thing isn't anywhere near as prevalent as it was. And so if it was all driven by, hey, we succeeded in this great, tamping down of all of these different issues in the culture, now we can kind of become a smaller organization and focus on areas where it does still happen. They can't they'll never do that, right? They want to keep expanding. They want to keep getting donors and stuff. And so, yeah, they're never going to admit that we've come so far.
Certainly they do that. However, I'm not so sure about the ADL's bona fides. I think it's certainly plausible that the organization's original aims to make sure that any kind of anti-Semitic talk in the country is countered. That certainly is a reasonable goal. But with the Southern Poverty Law Center, that was never, ever, ever a clean organization. That was always a far left organization intended to abuse and to defund people who think differently from them.
Right.
So that was never a clean place.
Yeah, I'll just then close. I know, Sam, you'll remember, I believe it's O'Sullivan's Law, that any organization that is not explicitly right-wing will become increasingly left-wing over time. So it's just kind of like the nature of organizations. But you're absolutely right. The Southern Poverty Law Center was always a left-wing attack group. be honest. And the ADL was, like I said in the beginning, was once considered rightly a neutral and organization that did positive things in the United States and around the world, and it became weaponized by the left. And so, good riddance.
Absolutely. Well, whoa, look at this layout. Thank you, Andy. That's very
Andy's
cool.
having some fun back there.
Yeah, it's the program that we use to do these broadcasts came up with a bunch of new stuff recently, so Andy's having fun with it. Okay, well, before I was kind of brought back into the topic by Chris, I was trying to have a really cool transition into our ad read here, where I said that it's getting scary out there and you should try to protect your assets in some way. As Jim has mentioned in the past before with regards to this particular topic, a lot of people in conservative, libertarian, or even just plain old prepper spaces will hit you guys with ads for buying precious metals. And they're not wrong that these are a good investment, but you really want to be careful about who you buy your metals from. And so at In the Tank, we trust Advisor Metals over all those other guys. And that's because we know that the person running the place is absolutely the best of the best. A great friend of Liberty, Ira Bershatsky, I'm sorry, sir. Ira Bershatsky owns and is the managing member of Advisor Metals. He has decades of experience in precious metals and is the only person in the physical precious metals industry who has the Commodities Futures Trading Commission federal registration. So what does all of that mean? Well, it means everything that Ira or a member of his team says to you has to be completely factual and backed up. So there's no sketchy sales pitch or any kind of bait and switch or anything. Ira is held to the absolute highest ethical standards, and there is full transparency, which is way too lacking in other places nowadays. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, and if you're planning for retirement and are concerned about economic uncertainty, if you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure your assets with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. He will make it super easy for you. Please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals, and you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your current portfolio. You can go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. And when you talk to Ira, be sure to let him know that we sent you. This helps us, and you're helping. This helps us at the same time as you are helping to secure your financial future by diversifying with precious metals at Advisor Metals. All right, so that's my first ever ad read, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm also very excited that Ira is helping us out here, especially since, as I always say at the start of the show, YouTube hates us, so he really helps us out a lot.
Speaking of precious metals, real quick, the cost of gold is just through the roof right now, so that might be a good long-term strategy because. U.S. dollar might be going down, guys. I hate to say that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, it is scary out there, both on the economic side and also on the physical violence side. Speaking of physical violence, our second topic today is talking about the teachers union in Chicago that is fluffing a terrorist, all while schools in blue states like Chicago or like Illinois in the Chicago area especially have been falling behind. So from The Spectator, we have the Chicago Teachers Union, entrusted with educating Chicago's children, used its official social media account to mourn the death of a convicted cop killer, Assata Shakur, calling her a revolutionary fighter and a leader of freedom. I want to interject to also say that this individual was a serial bank robber and part of an actual extremist terrorist group, the Black Panthers, and also the Black Liberation Army, which carried out terroristic attacks on police across the country. So that's nice. Shakur was found guilty of murdering New Jersey State Trooper Werner Forrester in 1973 and later escaped from prison, landing on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list with a $2 million bounty. She ended up in Cuba. And to make matters worse, the Chicago Teachers Union Vice President Jackson Potter doubled down after they got criticism on this, declaring that Assata was a freedom fighter. So the Tone Deaf Post is a glaring sign that the CTU can't be trusted to educate children. While the union wastes time lionizing a terrorist, Chicago public schools are failing spectacularly. In 55 schools, not a single child is proficient in math. Not a single one. Taxpayers shell out about $30,000 per student annually, yet the system squanders that money on everything but effective teaching. As an affiliate of Randy Weingarten's American Federation of Teachers, the CTU mirrors public national union extremism. Chicago public schools have morphed into a jobs program for adults rather than an education system for kids. Staffing ballooned 20% since just 2019, even as enrollment dropped 10%. Okay, so before I get to the bright side of this terrible thing, which is, that not all states are insane like this, Chris, we always have to go to you on these teachers union questions because you have the experience in the room. Does any of this surprise you at all?
No. I mean, many years ago, I did my student not my student teaching. I did a lot of shadow teaching actually in high schools and middle schools in Chicago, and it was a mess back then. I mean, there was no learning going on. I remember we would go as a cohort because we had probably about 13 or 14 of us at National Louis University in downtown Chicago, and we were all studying in the same group. And I remember after some of those trips, we would just look at each other being like, what did we just sign ourselves up for? Like, how are we going to do this? And I know someone, the beverage cart woman, I was going to say girl, excuse me, who is doing her student teaching right now at a Chicago public school. And we were talking a lot about that during the summer, and she was pretty scared. And I hate to say this, but she's been there now for about a month. And every time I ask her, how's it going? She just says the kids are getting worse and worse and worse. And she's in the physical education department. So she's not even in the quote unquote classroom. So if kids are not even remotely behaving in PE class to a really nice, young, good looking new teacher, I'm just, I can only imagine how bad things are in the classroom. So there's that aspect of it. The Chicago's Teachers Union themselves are just a radical political organization. We've seen that through from the pandemic when they were, advocating for school shutdowns, even though they knew that COVID-19 was not carried or transferred by kids, and the mask mandates and all this kind of stuff. Chicago public schools are in a huge budget deficit, and their only thing is we just need more money and we need more staff. So Chicago public schools are on the brink of total collapse. And the only viable solution to this is just complete unfettered school choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And they bring some of that up in the article as well, that, school choice is, the Chicago's Teachers Union says that school choice is racist. And yet the president, I believe, of the school district or of the teachers union sends their kids to private school. So it's one of those. All right. So I want to say, though, that there is a bright side to this, you guys. It's not that all American schools are completely collapsing in on themselves. So from the National Review, Mississippi, not California, is the education future. Mississippi went from 49th in fourth grade reading results on the national assessment about a decade ago to 9th in 2024. Its low-income children are ranked first in the nation. Its Black kids are number 3 in the nation, and its Hispanic kids number 1. Overall, when adjusted for socioeconomics and demographics, Mississippi has the best fourth grade results in the nation. In 2011, about 4 out of 5 fourth graders in Mississippi were proficient in reading. In 2013, the state passed a reform to require teachers to understand the science of reading, basically phonics, to deploy literary coaches to schools, to identify students struggling to read early, and to hold students back in third grade who weren't ready to advance. And that's a big one, you guys, because there are a lot of schools that'll just push kids along, even if they aren't passing. Alabama, Tennessee, and Louisiana have now done much the same and also have made gains. Mississippi outperforms California, even though the Golden State is richer and spends substantially more on education per pupil. More than half of Black fourth graders in Mississippi are at or above basic level, while only 28% of Black fourth graders in California are. So, our audience is funny. So obviously money is not the problem here. Mississippi is not known for being a super wealthy state. And, even when I was working offshore, that we had people from Mississippi, Louisiana, all over the place working on the rig, and everyone would always make fun of the Mississippi guy. I remember I was sitting at lunch one time, and the guy was like, oh, well, I was reading the whatever newspaper, whatever this morning, and blah, blah, blah. And one of the other guys at the table turns to him and he goes, BS. We all know people from Mississippi can't read. And so it's always been a joke, right? But now it's not so funny because they changed the way that they were doing things instead of just continuing to pour money on things that weren't working. And they have actually, rocketed up the standards. Sam, I know Chris is our resident expert here, but I know that you have a lot of thoughts about education and stuff. One of our people in our comment section here asked the question, Chris Nesbitt asked, what can the Trump administration do to turn schools into places where kids are taught how to think rather than what to think?
Get rid of the education department. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks. There really isn't that much that the federal government can or should do. Under the Constitution, the federal government doesn't have any authority to do anything about education. That's a state level concern. So what the federal government could do very well is get out. There is an interesting angle here, though, in my view, which is that, first of all, we know for a fact that spending levels have nothing to do with achievement levels. There's just the scatter graph is pretty ridiculous. So you look at a place like Mississippi, which has a really good performance now because they're doing certain things, and their spending is much lower. I'm wondering how long it will take before people will start to say to people from California, you can't fool me, you can't read, like they used to say about Mississippi. So, but I think the important thing here is that why does this happen? Why does it happen? Why do the test scores keep going lower and lower? And the answer is, of course, that students aren't being taught how to think. They aren't being taught how to cipher and how to read. And that's really the issue. But why aren't they being taught these things? Well, number one is there are education fads that have arisen that make it so they don't learn. We all know about whole language reading and so forth, which is the curse that has made it difficult for children to learn how to read when you simply, if you use phonics, as they are doing in the states that you cited, they do learn to read very, very well and very quickly. We taught our own children how to read before they went off to kindergarten in a religious school, by the way, parochial school. But we taught them how to read ourselves, my wife and I, and it was very easy. And teaching children is a lot easier, I guess, than teaching adults, but nobody seems to recognize that anymore. The reason, though, I think that all of this happens is that as we alluded to earlier, so many organizations in this country, so many institutions have been taken over by the far left. And education was taken over by the far left. And they're working for the government. These are government schools. So so the schools will have as their mission what serves the government, not what serves the parents, not what serves the children, not what serves the American people. And what serves the government is dependency. They get votes by offering money and treasures, other people's money and treasures, and time and effort to people who are not earning them or who cannot earn them on the level that they would like to have. And so since the government loves dependency and relies on dependency, is it really implausible that the government school system would develop into an organization, an institution, a nationwide network of institutions that create dependency? That's my theory, and I'm sticking with it.
Well, I think we also need to if we're going to play the blame game, I think we need to assign some of the blame to the parents, of these children as well. I remember when I was a kid, my mom, and she had, 4 kids at the time, and me and my brother are pretty close. I remember doing flashcards and doing those little reading books. I hated doing that stuff. My mom made me do it. My mom, she's a grandmother now, and she takes my little nephew to the library, a couple days a week, and just to get him to just look at books. And I think there's a big part of that we're missing out on here. And I think in Chicago public schools in particular, the parents are not engaged nearly as much as they should be. I grew up in a really affluent suburb here, and the parents took a very heavy hand in the child's education. And it's easy to always blame the schools, and I'm not taking the schools off the hook whatsoever here, but there's also a bit of responsibility that needs to be placed on the parents here.
Yeah, may I add something to that, Chris? I think that one of the things that we need to start talking about is that the incentives for parents to make sure that their children become educated have been undermined terribly by the welfare state. Why do you need to study if you got a guaranteed income? And it's actually pretty good, the income you can get through various programs when you add it all up and include non-monetary benefits. When you include all that, it's actually more. The bottom 20% of income quintile, the bottom income quintile, actually gets more than the second 20%.
I know, but Sam, what I'm really talking about is the cycle of poverty and the cultural, aspect of this. Of it needs to be broken at some point, and you can't just say, well, it's all incumbent upon the schools to break that cycle. At a certain point, I do think that the parents, the guardians, grandparents, in many cases, especially for kids in Chicago, they need to be the ones who say, you know what, reading is the best way for you. One of the best ways for you to have a a fulfilling life and a good career, and just they need to make sure that they are doing everything they can to make sure that their kids are succeeding.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think that the welfare state is what is enhancing that mentality across the country.
For sure.
And also to play off of what kind of both of you are saying, but like Chris, if the parents that are engaged with their kids' educations and stuff, when I was living in Louisiana, it was a thing that basically no one went to public school if they could avoid it. And so there's a huge, the word industry is not the right word, but I'm going to use it. There's a huge industry, and there's a huge amount of people who work very hard to make a lot of scholarships available to go to, the private schools, the Catholic schools, especially in Louisiana. That's a big thing down there. So that kids don't have to go to public school. They make so many little scholarships and programs to help parents and stuff so that they don't have to send them to public school, because it has been historically so bad. And the parents who are engaged are going to move heaven and earth to make sure that their kids don't go to these failing schools. But
to be honest with you, I went to a very good, supposedly good public school, high school. And if I had a kid, I would not send them to that high school, because they're going to get indoctrinated. Yeah, they're going to learn how to read. I guarantee you that. And they're going to learn how to do some basic math and science and stuff, but they're going to get indoctrinated and brainwashed.
Yeah. And I'm in the same boat as you, Chris. I went to a very, very good public school, like North Chicago suburbs public school.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
One of my big rivals, actually.
Yours.
I don't know.
but
yeah, it was only one of the top 5 public high schools in the entire world, country for 3 decades. But
they got a great golf team too. A great golf team.
Very good school. But I wouldn't send my kids to any, especially no Illinois public school. I mean, that's especially now. I can only imagine it's worse than then. And but the schools that are really terrible, the ones downtown Chicago Unified Public School District and stuff, that's like tantamount to child abuse at this point. I mean, I really do think that the union abuses their students at least on the educational front. So it's very, very bad down there. We had another question here from the chat that I want to bring up real quick. That was, let me see if I can find it again. R.H. Hutchins asks, from Texas, it looks like, asks, what standards are used to determine performance levels in schools? Is there a national standard used by all states and school districts? Chris, do you know the answer to that one?
Well, that's a really interesting thing that he brings up, because I forgot I wanted to mention that. So the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is usually known as the nation's report card, I checked because the NAEP report came out a couple of weeks ago showing all these scores, and they have actually changed the grading metrics so that actually the scores are lower than they used to be, and they're still declining. So they have been gaming the system, and I remember this happened a lot during my time in South Carolina with state testing, where they gamed the system. And it looks like you're making improvements, but in reality, no, you're not. So actually the score window for proficiency has been lowered over the years. And still, despite that, there are not as many, obviously, students, especially in Chicago, who are even near the proficient level.
All right, thank you.
But everybody gets a trophy because they tried hard.
There's another really important question in the chat here from K1, who says, question, what is Chris's golf handicap?
Chris is having a little bit of a difficult time with his shoulder, so his golf handicap is up recently, but he's determined to dedicate himself this offseason to making his shoulder 100% better.
That was mean, Andy.
That was mean. Especially I got a tournament on this Sunday, and I'm.
Can I make a few points here before we move on from this topic?
Yes.
First of all, that you did not give a number. I didn't hear a number in your answer, Chris. So that's all right. You can share it in the private chat, and then.
Unfortunately, it's moved to a double-digit number, which I'm very sad about.
All right. Well, anyway, just a few points. I mean, $30,000 a year in the Chicago Unified School District is what we spend on each kid. I mean, for that kind of money, you could go to the same private school outside of St. Louis that Jasmine Crockett went to, so that she can then pretend that she's, some girl from the hood or something, with her little performance art in Congress. Let's also remember, we've talked about it, both Sam and Chris talked about this, but the real culprit for this, the failure of our public schools, is the teachers' unions. There's absolutely no question about that. And it has been the destruction. In fact, if you wanted to destroy America's public school system, what exactly would you have done differently than the national teachers unions have done over the last 40 years? They've done a fantastic job of that. The idea, as you mentioned there, Linnea, in reading that, not a single student in the Chicago Unified School District is proficient in math. Zero, not one, not a single one. That would seem very hard to achieve, but I'd have to hand it to the teachers union. They were able to pull that off. Randi Weingarten today is on a book tour. Do you know what the name of her book is? You may have seen this on social media.
The F word.
Why Fascists Fear Teachers. When the head of your teachers union, that's her book. By the way, if you are, unfortunately, if your paycheck is conscripted to those crooks in your national teachers union, they spent about $200,000 promoting Randi Weingarten and her book tour, by the way. So that's what some of your hard-earned money goes to, as you try to, those of you who do try to, to actually teach the kids in there. And, we've talked a little bit about you need school choice. There are absolutely, and the arrogance and the attitude of people like Randi Weingarten is very indicative. And if you live in the Chicago area and you watch any local news, there seems to be a strike every year. And then you get to see on display in press conferences the absolute unearned arrogance of the teachers and teachers unions, talking about how they're underpaid and, they have a tough job and all that stuff. It gets a little irritating. But, it is true that there are no incentives for somebody like Randi Weingarten to actually care about kids. Again, you have to remember, One of the reasons that our children, even in Chicago and elsewhere, have fallen behind is because Randy Weingarten insisted that the schools nationwide basically stay closed everywhere for 2 straight years. That it was too dangerous, that these poor kids are not actually, they don't have young skulls full of mush that need to be filled with information. They are breathing bags of disease that is going to kill. You're putting our lives at risk by bringing these kids into school. Don't ever, I don't ever forget that. I know parents across the country don't forget that. And so you're probably going to end up, I don't think Randy Weingarten's book's going to sell very well, at least not legitimate sales. I bet some teachers unions dues will actually go to buy those in bulk, just a little guess. But and just my last point, if you don't have school choice, then there is absolutely no outside incentive for these schools to improve. There is no reason, there is no pressure whatsoever on any public school in the city of Chicago to get better. And not even a lot better, not even to get, it has this for a great goal. Get half the kids in the Chicago school district proficient in math and reading. Just half, which would be an F on any test, but let's see if you can do that. It is impossible. They cannot do that. And so many people in our chat have left comments talking about how homeschooling is the answer. And that really is the answer. Through technology, everybody, no matter their place on the socioeconomic scale, has at their fingertips, in their pocket, all the information they need on how to educate themselves and their children. If I can use YouTube to learn how to make, wonderful French baguettes when I never knew how to do it before, or repair a ceiling fan, or, replace lighting in my garage, or build shelving units, then anyone can learn their multiplication tables, or do more complicated math, or learn how to read using phonics, or, learn about the Renaissance. The world of information is at your fingertips. I really believe this. Maybe you guys can disabuse me of this idea. You could sit a kid in front of the right YouTube channels all day for a year, and he would learn 10 times more than he would learn if he was going to any school in the city of Chicago, even the best school in the city of Chicago. Because there is no incentive for the teachers to actually teach children. That's not what their job is. That's not what they see. Or I should say this way, the teachers union, what was it? Maybe this is an apocryphal story. They said, if you want us to care about kids, you should give them a union rep too. Our job is to protect the teachers' interests, not the children. They don't have a union. It's too bad for them.
Jim hit the nail on the head here. The lack of competition. They have no incentive to better their performance. I know that a lot of people are going to say, well, homeschooling, not everyone has that opportunity, but there are so many other options. How about micro schools? How about just, unfettered charter schools? How about all there? I also, just really think that a lot of this, can be solved, like Jim said, with self-drive. Since I graduated college, I've read hundreds of books about topics that I want to learn more about. I have learned way more in the years since my college education than I did formally, at Indiana University. And I still think that exists for, every single person in the United States. And it's even more so with, technology, because now we do have the ability to go online and, have all these resources at our fingertips. So, the schools are definitely failing, but, at the same time, there are options to solve this problem. And, I really hope that future generations, and it does seem like a lot of Chicago parents are getting pretty fed up with this. So that's a very good thing.
One thing states could do is simply eliminate the option of teachers' unions within their states. Remember that the far left, almost Marxist, left-winger President FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who imposed the New Deal and so much concentration of government, said that there should never ever be public sector unions. That it's an obvious scam to have public employees unionize and have all that money go to politicians who will support their goals, and then their goals become not about the children, but about the not even about the teachers. It's about the unions getting more and more money. It was not Randy Weingarten, but it was another teachers union president who said, I'll represent the students when the students are paying our union dues.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, and you know, for our audience here, you guys might not know it because we've been so kind of laser focused of late, you know, on our front facing kind of social media side on the climate issue and all of that. But the Heartland Institute actually is extremely strong in the school choice arena. And we're working on becoming even more strong in that area. So if you guys want to look at our website, heartland.org, you will find tons of resources about school choice there. And I want to get moving on to our next topic here, our topic number 3 out of 4, as we approach the top of the hour. But I think that this is important to cover, and I'm really glad that we were able to. So we don't have to spend too much time on topic 3. I just wanted to mention it because it actually ties into some other Heartland work that's been done by our very own Samantha Fillmore. But I came across this article at American Thinker by Bill Ponton, who I'm sorry, Bill, if I'm mispronouncing your name, but which I thought he made some really good points that kind of lead into that work I was talking about. But he writes, when did the Wall Street Journal give up on making coherent arguments? It certainly seems to be the case with a recent Wall Street Journal article entitled "The U.S. is Forfeiting the Clean Energy Race to China." The premise of that article, as you might have guessed, is that the U.S. will lose out to China if it does not match China's level of subsidization. Wow, that was a struggle, of clean energy. Nowhere in the article did the authors ask, is a race worth winning? I contend that it isn't. The authors start out by asserting that the rapid pace of EV adoption in China and elsewhere casts a long shadow over oil demand. Natural gas will be burned for decades, but increasingly competitive solar panels and batteries might sap how much of it the world will need. Do the authors think that a reader will jump at that bait? There is no oil or gas producer losing any sleep over competition from EVs, solar panel, or batteries. The authors have created a straw man. They go on to state that China installed 277 gigawatts of wind and solar capacity in the first 7 months of the year, quadruple the utility scale additions federal analysts in the U.S. project across all power sources for 2025. That could give China a big advantage in the power-hungry AI race. The implication being that wind and solar capacity is compatible with the energy needs of AI data centers, which is not the case for those who have tried and failed with just such a scheme. See Tech Titan's quest for net zero. At this point, the authors pull all the big guns and quote Wally Adeyemo, former Deputy Treasury Secretary under Biden, stating that countries across the world are going to be even more reliant on Chinese technology to power their economies to make the cars they drive. I guess that might be true if they're foolhardy enough to permit net zero ambitions to take precedence over economic growth and national security, in which case they deserve to be beholden to the Chinese. All right, that's Bill Ponton. And I thought that this was great. That's why I wanted to read such a huge chunk of it. He is so right. The real question is, do we want to be beholden to the Chinese? Do we want to buy all of their solar panels and EVs and their components? Guys?
I have a question right off the bat here. So the Wall Street Journal apparently was praising China for all their solar and windmill crap. Did they mention that China's also building coal-fired power plants at an amazing clip? Because that's what's actually going to be fueling their data centers and all of their AI stuff. There's no way that China's, dumb enough to think that they can build a infrastructure, an AI infrastructure, and then power it with wind and solar. So, I mean, that is just such a joke. It is just, it is like, guys, here we are. After all these years, all this time that the solar, and wind stuff has, had time to be put into place, and it is just completely failing. Look at New Jersey, look at California, look at Illinois. Electricity bills are going up through the roof. This stuff just does not work. I'll let Jim go. I mean, there's just just give me a break. Wall Street Journal, shame on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of what was so incredible there. And not only that, but I want to add to this before we jump all over this topic. There is an additional reason why we don't want to be beholden to China. And it's something that Heartland has tackled at the state level. In a recent research and commentary article, Samantha Fillmore our senior state government relations manager at Heartland Impact, suggested that Georgia should be introducing legislation, and other states should introduce legislation, frankly, that says that government contracts should not be getting EVs made with forced labor or child labor. That basically eliminates all the EVs made by China and their components. The CCP, as we all know, funds activism and lobbying to push the green agenda, which Samantha explains results in us relying on rare earth elements and products from China. So this is a good kind of, I don't want to say sneaky, but it's a good kind of extra reason that states can present that would kind of put especially Democrats kind of on their back foot as to, so why are we funding this? Why are we subsidizing this at the state level? Well, and this particular bill is talking about, state governments subsidizing electric vehicles for their own fleets, which we shouldn't be doing anyway, but this is just another way to kind of block that from happening. Guys, so China has got all of us in a pretty strong hold here. I see one of our commenters here mentioning that solar panels with built-in kill switches, heaven forbid, no China anything. That was one of the kind of cautions that have been spread by some national security experts, but also just like random people online mostly. It turned out to not be the case that kill switches were activated in like Portugal and Spain when they had their blackouts, but that's definitely something that's possible if you rely so much on China for things, who is a global enemy of the West. And to think that we should be relying on them for everything, not to mention the fact that the green stuff is a big scam and doesn't work. But yeah, it's all topsy-turvy.
You ask why we subsidize these things and why we mandate their use. And the reason is very simple, because certain people profit from it, and they profit very well. And the rest of us only, we're the frogs in the pot. They slowly turn up the temperature, and we don't realize that, okay, I was paying, X number of dollars or cents per kilowatt hour, and now it's more, and now it's more. And so we want to blame the electric company, or the same goes with the price of automobiles and the like. But it's because certain people benefit hugely from these rules and regulations and laws. And the rest of us just have to pay a little bit in relative terms. So they have a much stronger incentive to get the government to do these things. And why does the Wall Street Journal write positive articles about these things? For the very same reason. There doesn't need to be a conspiracy. It's just a system that is developed it's called corporatism. When you have government favoring one endeavor over another in the private sector, then what you have is the temptation for those, let's say, less scrupulous people to game the system. And the way that you game the system is by getting politicians on your side. So what happens here is it's the same on both sides of the ball. It's the same on the private sector as in the public sector, that people benefit from this, and so they will do it. And that's what we need to do. Again, as I said earlier, we need government to act in order to reduce government. You have to have the government say, this is not going to happen anymore. And until that happens, we're just going to be stuck in the same mud.
Yeah, and I want to hustle us along a bit, but I do want to see what Jim has to say about this.
Yeah, just very briefly, because I know we got a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Let me be very clear about this. There is no green future. Okay, Wall Street Journal, there is no green future. The future is fossil fuels and nukes for the next 100 years at least, period. I mean, we had this thought that we could get to a green future, but that was only because it was mandated by government. And if we continue to pursue this green future mandated by government, it's actually going to be a black future. Black as in the light's not going to come on anymore. That's the future. This whole thing that it's inevitable, we're going to a green powered future. We are not doing that. We are seeing other societies, other governments trying to do that, and it is a disaster. And it's because it is not possible to do this. We are going to be burning fossil fuels for the next 100 years. Get used to it. And the good news is it's not ruining the environment. We are not boiling the planet because of doing this. So this delusion is even infected the Wall Street Journal, which is very disappointing. But I think eventually it's just going to break from the world. It's certainly broken on this show and the Climate Realism Show every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to check that out.
Excellent job there, Jim. All right, so our final topic, what is supposed to be our main topic, but we have once again established ourselves as a show that is an hour and a half long and not an hour long. But the government has shut down again. This happens every couple of years, sometimes multiple times in a row, and every single time all of our representatives freak out about it, and all of us regular citizens kind of look around wondering what exactly is changed for us. So, Sam, I'm going to read a little bit from your wonderful newsletter, Life, Liberty, Property, for this. So sorry in advance for reading your own words at you. You wrote congressional Republicans, and this was before it actually shut down, so you weren't quite sure if we were gonna do it or not. But I think that your statements on it still hold. Congressional Republicans and Democrats are engaged in another government shutdown showdown, having received massive criticism and abuse from fellow Democrats after backing down while approaching a government funding deadline last March. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is taking a hard line this time around, aided by his equally intrepid House counterpart, Representative Hakeem Jeffries. Democrats view this as an opportunity to force concessions. Senate Democrats are demanding the restoration of $1.5 trillion in spending cuts established in the OBBBA, including the restoration of $450 billion in Obamacare spending reductions, reversal of Trump's minute spending rescissions, and a few other things that will likewise expand the federal government and shrink the economy. The trade the Democrats are offering is simple: a massive, permanent increase in government spending for 7 weeks of government funding. So, Sam, we have now been shut down for 2 days. Should we be worried as regular citizens about this? Will our NASA-run satellites fall out of the sky? Is the military all going home? Will the post office even stop delivering? What happens now?
Our biggest worry would be that if they restarted the government, I think that would be awful. Really, what has gone on here is such a perfect example of the kabuki dance that the shutdowns always are. It's never about running the government. It's never about size of government. It's always about politics. And in this particular case, it's absolutely bizarre. I mean, the Democrats are saying that you need to raise the government spending on an annual basis, year after year after year, by well over 1.5 trillion, or you cannot get 7 weeks of spending for the government. Now, I think that this is so ludicrous a position that it can only be understood as by using the idea that I've just mentioned earlier about incentives. And the incentives for Schumer are that he won't be abused by his party. He won't be he won't have his life threatened and the trivial things of that nature. If he goes out to a restaurant, they won't turn the table over on him or something, as they do to Republicans and conservatives. So what had happened there is that Schumer gave in I think it was March, and they passed the continuing resolution to keep the government open. And he said, no, this time we're not doing that. Well, at that time, it was a much longer period. So you had some plausible reason to say, well, we need to get something in return for our votes. But in this case, it's 7 weeks. We could let the government, honestly, we could let the government shut down for 7 weeks and people wouldn't notice it except for the hysterical news stories that would be claiming that everyone who died during that period died of closed federal government. It would be just like under the COVID lockdowns, where everyone who died with COVID died of COVID. So the whole situation is absolutely absurd, and that is why I think it is so smart of President Donald Trump to have taken it as a joke. and to have made a joke out of the thing, where their premise is, we cannot have a national government if we are not giving free health care to people who are in this country illegally, and putting that sombrero on people, and then having Trump himself be the mariachi band. You have to see that clip. It's absolutely hysterical. But what it does is it just indicates what a ludicrous situation this is. My point was that it didn't make any sense from a political standpoint. Even last week, you could see leading up to this that it wasn't going to work for the Democrats because they have no leverage. They had no way of saying, look, if the Republicans don't back down and give us this 1.5 million, X will happen. Oh, what is X? There is no X. There was nothing that they could say. X will happen. What will happen is that people in this country illegally won't get Medicaid. Whoa. How many people are really driven by that? Did you know that only 2% of the country in polls say that healthcare as a whole is their biggest issue, the most important issue? Only 2% in the country. So you're going to get 1 in 50 voters that way. Well, good luck with that. I know these elections are close, but you probably already had all of them. So this is really just a ridiculous situation, and I think we need to treat it as such.
I don't think that the healthcare for illegals is the core of this fight. First of all, this goes back to a couple continuing resolutions ago. So the current baseline spending is the Biden era spending. We've been using continuing resolutions for, I think, like 18 months now, right. just to keep, the government alive. What Mike Johnson is trying to do is he's trying to reestablish the appropriations process where they have the 12 separate appropriations bills and you go through them step by step. That has not happened in a very long time. So what the Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to say that we won't vote for this unless you renew the Obamacare subsidies that were greatly enhanced under the pandemic, which is supposed to sunset in 2025. Right now, I did some research into this because Obamacare, about 15 years now in the making here, and it has completely failed to deliver on its core promise of making healthcare more affordable. It's so bad that what they're trying to do is they're trying to put more subsidies in place for people who make $600,000. It's like, I mean, come on. This is not people who are, right at the very, poverty line who are just trying to get by. No, those people, they don't pay a penny for healthcare. This is actually to get people who are fairly well off, who are in Obama for whatever reason, in Obamacare for whatever reason, so that their premium payments and all their deductible payments don't just go through the roof. So really, it does not get to the core of the problem. The root cause of the problem is that our healthcare, when you look at the budget, our healthcare, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, all these other programs, it eats up a gigantic amount of the budget. RFK is trying to, I think, get to the root cause of that by saying American people are really, really unhealthy, and we're taking a huge amount of healthcare resources, especially as they get older. We cannot keep doing this. We can't. Because Obamacare is a failing model because not enough young, healthy people are in there to subsidize the older, sicker people. So really what this boils down to is Democrats are saying, we want our cake and we want to eat it too. We want all the Biden era spending, just keep doing it. We want all the enhanced subsidies to just keep going. And on top of that, we want to keep giving Medicaid to illegal immigrants, which is a total just absurd idea on its head, because did you know that every single illegal immigrant in this country, or every single American in this country, can go into an emergency room and they cannot get denied care? So it's just there are so many reasons why this. I just had a surgery and I had to pay through the nose for it, and I'm probably never going to get my refund because there's just so much just bureaucracy and glop in the system, and this and that and this code and that code, and it's bad.
All right, tell us how you really feel, Chris. That would be that'd be good for us. Chris rant. I want to point out that also, the Trump administration has said that this is a very good opportunity for them to have more mass layoffs from the federal government. So the Epic Times covered this. They said the director of the Office of Management and Budget signaled Tuesday that the government shutdown that began today is an opportunity to carry out mass federal layoffs. When asked about reports that hundreds of thousands of federal workers could lose their jobs during the process, OMB Director Russell Vought, is it Vought? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought so. Said that the White House has been aiming to shrink the size of the federal government. So I love this. On Truth Social, Trump posted a hilarious post about Vought, who Trump trollishly says is of Project 2025 fame. And if any of you guys remember the hysterics around Project 2025 from last year, it's just like twisting the dagger. And Trump went on to say that he and Russ will determine which of the many Democrat agencies, most of which are a political scam, he recommends to be cut, and whether or not those cuts will be temporary or permanent. So once again, and of course he had to add, I cannot believe the radical left Democrats gave me this unprecedented opportunity. They are not stupid people, so maybe this is their way of wanting to, quietly and quickly, make America great again. President DJT. So he really is like the funniest person in American politics.
Linnea, this is the biggest political judo move of all time. It is so brilliant.
Tell us.
Oh, well, the point is that the Democrats are giving Trump politically what he's wanted all along, which is the ability to shrink the government. That's what Doge was all about, of course, and so many of the other Trump actions have been about. And they're giving him the ability to shrink the government legally. And this is a big difference, I think, between the first Trump administration and the second. In the first Trump administration, they weren't anywhere near as well prepared as they've been now, and they were under huge harassment by the federal government itself, interestingly enough. But what happens here is that they are using the laws themselves to get what they want. And this is an interesting point to me. People have said for decades, good people have said for decades, that everything's illegal in this country, that they've made such a big web of laws and regulations that you can't do anything. But that, when conservatives or Republicans would get into government, they would conserve that system instead of using it against itself. Whereas Trump now has the sort of magic key here. It's almost like a Harry Potter situation where he has discovered the magic key, which is to use what the system has given you against it. And he's done this repeatedly, and all the court decisions have been just not only brilliant and just so laudable, but hilarious. That the left brings these lawsuits and then they get shut down and then they can't do it anymore. Because once you have the law established on that point, you can't do it anymore. And so this is absolutely how you should go about things. Use what you have and use all of it and win, win, win. Just win, baby. Don't worry about anything else. And that's what the big difference between this administration and Trump's first administration has been, that he's using the tools of government to shrink the government. I think it's just absolutely what the country needs.
Jim, I mean, what should happen next year? I heard a rumor that some billions have already been eliminated from certain pet projects in Democrat states. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, what didn't Trump? It was $18 billion in infrastructure spending around New York City. He decided to punish.
Climate related.
And Jeffries for that directly. It's like, hey, sorry, these are the rules. These are rules you guys put in place, and Donald Trump's going to use them. $8 billion in Green New Deal spending was also canceled thanks to this. And let's actually go through some other numbers here. Actually, I was thinking about this morning. Chris already pointed out that what the Democrats have done is that they rejected the Biden spending plan. Right? This is not Donald Trump's budget. None of this is his spending. It was a continuing resolution that came in before he was even inaugurated. So they voted for it earlier, a few months ago, and now it's a no-go. So they have the problem here is that you guys might have noticed, because we've seen a lot of these shutdowns, and if you watch the media, you watch how the media frames these things. This shutdown is not hitting like all the other ones did, and I think one of the reasons for that is that the Democratic Party's brand is really damaged right now. Like, they don't have any credibility really with voters, with ordinary Americans. This last election really exposed them for what they are, hysterics who call for fascism this, Nazi that. You lose. There's a price to pay for that. There's a lot of prices to pay for that. One of them is a lack of credibility with people. So when they run out here and say that this is the Republican shutdown and they're literally killing kids, that shit don't play anymore. I'm sorry, I'm going to swear, but they're not buying that anymore, and they don't believe the media when they say it either. And second, you guys, meaning the Democrats especially, shut everything down for the pandemic, and it was indefinite, and you just had to get used to it. None of it actually was necessary, of course. And I think a lot of Americans think, well, if we could live through that, we can live through, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks of, maybe I'll have to delay going to this federal office. Big deal. It's closed now. Maybe it'll be open next week. If you can deal with the ridiculous policies that the left and the Democrats implemented during COVID, I think we can all endure a little bit of a government shutdown. And another thing, Sam, when you were saying that, and then you put the story up there, Linnea, that, and the tweet, or I should say the Truth Social post from Trump saying that he and Ross Spot are sitting there. I can just see them, they were sitting in a room, rubbing their hands together. What are we going to get rid of forever now, right? This better not be one of those Lucy with the football moments. I mean it. If Donald Trump wants to really piss off his base, then he's, we got to be able to kick that football and get the government actually freaking downsized for once, because this is literally a once in a lifetime opportunity to actually get rid of. I think we have 3 million federal employees, across the country. We don't need that many. We don't need half that many. We need to get rid of these people. So, and if this can happen, the deep state is real, right? So maybe perhaps we get rid of all these, 300,000 people resigned en masse on Tuesday. I said on X, that's a great start. Those are rookie numbers. We got to get those numbers up. those are not good enough. But maybe when we do, if the federal government has to be repopulated, maybe for once 9.6 out of every 10 federal bureaucrat isn't a crazy leftist saboteur. And maybe for once we can get federal bureaucrats who will actually see it as their job to implement the agenda that the American people just voted for. Through their little agency. What a crazy concept. And one last thing, federal spending in 2019 before the pandemic was $4.4 trillion. It's $7 trillion this year. That's a 60% increase in 5 years. That is ridiculous. The idea that we need to spend that kind of money, that if we went back to 2019 spending levels, it would mean the end of everything and people dying in the streets, is absurd. You guys don't have any credibility on that. People can look these numbers up for themselves. It's very easy. Our national debt in 2019 before the pandemic, $23 trillion, which is crazy. That's way too high. It's $35 trillion today. That's an increase of 52%. So this has to happen. Like I said, this cannot be a Lucy pulling the football away moment, and then we fly up in the air and fall on our backs. And wonder, gosh, did it again. It happens now or it never happens. I hope. It seems that Donald Trump is having some fun with it, with his Truth Social account, but he really also needs to be serious about it. This must happen. We cannot sustain this level of spending. We do not need a government this big, because a government this big, as we have found, can trample the rights of ordinary citizens, make their lives hell, and be weaponized against enemies of so-called enemies of the state. So it's now or never. Pray that it's now.
So I'm reading a biography of LBJ right now, and it just I bring it up because it just struck me as so funny that in I think it was like 66, 67, after Great Society had a couple of years, and Vietnam War was out, obviously waging. The federal deficit, I think, was $28 billion that year. And LBJ, of all people, was wringing his neck going, oh my gosh, this is so bad. We got to cut programs. We got to get this war spending down. Might have to do a little tax surcharge here. Because even LBJ, Mr. Big Government, in the mid to late 1960s, could not foresee a budget deficit of $30 billion happening again and again and again. It just blows my mind that here we are, and we've got multi-trillion-dollar deficits for as long as the eye can see. On CNN the other day, they were talking about, oh my gosh, the national debt is 37 trillion. I mean, this is like completely out of control. Our kids are going to be completely poverty ridden, but we can't cut spending. It's like, wait a second, those two things can't coexist at the same time. Like Jim said, we've got $7 trillion going through Washington, D.C. these days, and you could probably cut at least half that and not even miss a beat. So Donald Trump, I think, is going to take advantage of this. And I also think that the reason this is happening is because Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries are in between a rock and a hard place. They cannot give into this because then they'll be seen as cooperating with Trump administration. However, this is a losing proposition. The Senate only needs 5 more votes to get it passed. We've already seen Fetterman and I think Capito close ranks, and they have joined the Republicans on this. So in a week or so, you'll get another 5 Democrats, maybe even Durbin. He's retiring soon. He'll join and get the government open again. But man, the Democrats, like Jim said, I mean, they have nothing to sell. They have nothing, no future, no future to sell the American people. And here they are now, just trying to play political, games with this shutdown, and the American people, I think, see right through it.
Absolutely, and I think everybody's getting tired of the as you said earlier, kabuki theater, or whoever it was that said the kabuki theater, when it comes to every time that there is a shutdown. But you guys, this is all the time we have, unfortunately. Thank you, everyone, for all of your attention to these matters. Of course, as always, we are live every single week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Look, I didn't know what to say when the music wasn't coming on when I started the outro. I was like, oh man, I guess we're not ending, but actually we are, you guys. I'm so sorry about all of that. Chris, do you have anything to take us out on?
Well, I'm gonna just repeat myself. Go Cubs! Game time. Awesome. Game time is just 38 minutes from now.
Jim?
No, I thank people in the chat who enjoyed my rants today. I actually didn't expect to do any ranting. I was feeling kind of chill, but yeah, you get what you get. So join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. It's every Friday for the Climate Realism Show on this channel. It's always a great show, and hope to see you there.
Awesome. Sam?
Thank you, Linnea. Go to the Heartland Institute website, heartland.org, and take a look at Life, Liberty, Property, where you can find out what's going to happen before it even happens.
Yeah, look, it's a great publication. I only read a little bit of it for this show today, but there was a lot of good information in there, you guys, so definitely follow that. For our audio listeners, please rate us well on whatever service that you are using. Leave a review for us. It really does help. And thank you so much to all of our usual panelists. It's always a great time, you guys. Thanks again, everyone. We will see you again next week.